Well, welcome back, my ambitious little astronauts, to our lunar base. Last episode, we made some pretty big additions to the base, like the observatory that I'm currently talking to you in, and this episode shall be no different as we have a lot in mind and a lot in store. Such as maybe raiding our enemies and capturing many of them and trying to rehabilitate them. Yeah. Something like that. And something like that also means that we are going to need a pretty hefty extension onto our prison, as currently we can only hold up to 2 prisoners. Comfortably, I should say, as now we can hold up to 4 without any issues like mental breaks and things like that, as the place is pretty nice. If we end up capturing more than that, we might have to throw some of them out into the hallway for a temporary period of time. We've also been planning out the mission to attack the base of our enemies, Miasma Aerospace, and to go about doing that, we're going to need a vessel that can carry at least about 3 or 4 of us, and our current one can barely hold 1 person, so we need to make some pretty good extensions onto that as well, and to go about doing that, we need a lot of components and a lot of steel, as you see us mining out here. We're not getting too awful fancy with the ship, we're just extending the hull out a bit, opening it up so that we can put in some beds and things of that sort, basically just some room to walk around. Now the problem with this is though we don't currently have any plasteel, as the most abundant resources here on our moon are just components and steel and no plasteel. So to address our severe lack of this light blue resource, we're actually going to be trading with some companies back on the planet's surface, trading them some of our cloth and normal steel in exchange for a good bit of plasteel. Now with a good portion of our rare metal finally in our grasp, we can make those additions to the ship, extending it furthermore, and even adding in a capacitor to store power. That is much better than a battery. And we can also add in some quality of life items like yet another interactive table so that we can entertain ourselves on our journeys throughout space, and some beds. That way, well, we don't have to sleep on the floor. As you can imagine, that's kind of important. And from the view of our lunar nuts, the ship is looking mighty different, but from our perspective, I suppose you can't really tell. Here's an artist rendition. You like it? I knew that you would. Anyhow though, we need some more fuel for our ship. Sure, we still have plenty to get us over to the other moon orbiting our home planet, but what if we need to come back? Well, we do, and thus we need more fuel, so we've actually built a biofuel refinery, and we plan on refining some chem fuel. But, Rat Daddy, how are you going to refine chem fuel here on the moon? There's no wood, you silly little beaver. Well, first of all, I'm a rat, so watch your mouth. And second of all, we have plenty of beef that is frozen just outside our base doors, being irradiated by the sun's cosmic rays. We have indeed been eating some of it, but most of it just seems to be sitting out there, so I thought this would be the perfect item to turn into chem fuel. Besides, we're supposed to be self-sustaining. It would look pretty bad if we had to request fuel from HQ. So now the ship is ready to go. However, our lunar knots are not. You may notice that they're all wearing the exact same colors, and this can actually make for a difficult time telling them all apart when trying to give out orders, so I thought that maybe a little color coding is needed here. After having them all spray paint their uniforms to their favorite colors, they were much easier to tell apart, and this is going to make it much easier if we were to maybe get into a little bit of a scrap with Miasma Aerospace. While we're taking a closer look at our lunar knots, I actually want to show off some art, and please don't skip, as this is not any of my silly artist renditions. This is some actual art created by our good friend at King on Discord. They're always creating some amazing artworks for our series, and this just blows me away every time. I love these. In particular here, I love the one where Mizaki is praying for a friend, someone to join her on the moon here, and then we have a rapidly approaching Porg. By far my absolute favorite, so thank you King as always. But But now that we've color-coded our lunar knots and also taken a look at some amazing artwork of a few of them, it's time for us to continue expanding our lunar base, wouldn't you say so? Something that we've needed this entire time, and I can't believe has taken us so long, except for the fact that we didn't really have the manpower to mine out this great big mountain so quickly, is some type of lunar garage, I suppose, for our rovers. What rovers, you ask? Well, I'm so glad you asked, because we're getting ready to create one. Thankfully, HQ had already sent up the blueprints for one that has only been tested on the planet's surface, but should do just fine here in the low gravity of the moon. After whipping up a few parts with all the resources we've been collecting, all the silver we've been getting from a bit of trade, and the chem fuel we've been refining, we finally have our very first lunar buggy. Ain't she a beaut, lads and lasses, with the appropriate white paint job to try to get rid of any and all sunlight, as we don't want to be sucking up all that radiation at all times. It was now time for a test drive, and I must say that I am quite happy with how it performed. This is going to really help us out with a lot of our mining activities, as well as other activities and duties here on the moon, as it has a small cargo hold that can actually store a good bit of components in silver to bring back to the base once we've depleted all the nearby resource caches. Yes, indeed, I feel that it's going to be quite the game changer. I had almost forgot to build something of an airlock, though, in the garage for when we're leaving. We don't want anyone that's in there maybe working on the buggy or parts not without their helmet on to get sucked out and turn into a big frozen blob of blood and gas. But after some time, my friends, our lunar garage was complete. Now we just need to get another buggy or two in there and we will be completely golden, pony boy. We have plenty of storage facilities for all of our ores and resources. We have plenty of fuel barrels, and we also have plenty of monitors to keep up with our vehicles. And now, my friends, that more of the base is completed, we tackle an entirely different beast. A mission to the other moon around the planet. The one that is currently solely populated by Miasma Aerospace. This will not be an easy task, but we do not do things because they are easy. We do them because we have the courage. We quickly began unhooking our ship from all of the power to the base, meaning that we can now take off and begin our journey. All systems are a go. Let's light this candle. You never quite get used to how beautiful it is up here, above the planets and even the moons themselves. No time to stargaze, though, I'm afraid, as we need to land on this water moon as quickly as possible before we're picked up by any of their sensors. As we begin our descent, using the planet's orbit like a slingshot to get us in an orbit around our little water moon here, I wanted to mention the members we've brought. Elena, who is our weapons specialist, and Pork, who knows Miasma Aerospace better than any of us could ever hope to. Let's just hope that that's going to be enough to give us the upper hand. We've landed on the outskirts of their water base. Initial viewings appears that they don't quite know who we are, but they're not quite alarmed just yet either. The entire place looks like a great big oil rig back planet side. Not surprising, since I believe Miasma Aerospace is funded by some pretty large companies that dabble in oil. Here, how about an artist rendition? You like it? Well, something that I don't like is they've all gathered on the helipad and they've gathered up all their weapons. It would seem they realize that we're not friends. We, as well as Pork, were not expecting so darn many of them. They've quickly been expanding their population and the base, it would seem. There was only one way for us to survive any type of fight with them. Thanks to the moon's lower gravity, using our jump packs, we could jump around in these shallow waters, making our way towards their boats. Once we had managed to hijack a couple of their vehicles, we would take off like lightning, trying to make our way around this base, getting shot at all the while, but thankfully not in our heads, and only in the boats, which was pretty ideal. We needed to make our way to their communication center Otherwise, if they get word to the rest of the Aerospace company, they might get reinforcements a lot quicker than we would like. We tore open one of their armored walls and started lighting the inside of the room up like the 4th of July. Their lunar knots within were scattering and running around in shambles like bugs when you lift up a rock as we were firing at them, killing several of them and incapacitating several more. We would then quickly make a break inside of their comms room, barricading ourselves within, and we were able to quickly shut down any communications they had with any of their reinforcements outside a certain radius. And once that was completed, we started tending to our wounds. But as we were doing so, we began to wonder, what's next? You see, indeed we have barricaded ourselves within, but there are still many members from Miasma that are waiting to kill us on the outside. How do we get back to our ship? Sometimes when there isn't an opening, you have to make one yourself. We slung the great big doors open and began firing at these foolish freaks. During this time, though, Elena had taken a laser sword to the shoulder, knocking her to the ground. As Mizaki rushed in to grab her much better laser SMG, Porg would rush in to save Elena and begin tending to her wounds. All the while, Mizaki was providing cover fire, but there were far too many of them, and they all seemed quite courageous now, banging on the doors with their weapons trying to get in. Mizaki, being the commander that she was, would use her jump pack, leaving out the back of the building and sneaking around to the side to begin flanking our enemies. By the time that they knew that she was even there, it was far too late for all of them. She mowed them down like blades of grass in the summer sun. And with that, our enemies had been completely and utterly defeated, in their base was ours for the taking, it would seem. Although, that being said, we wouldn't be able to claim this place for ourselves. There are far too many dead members here, and no doubt they'll have many more coming to try to replace them. So, instead, these incapacitated enemies here will be tended to, and we would actually end up taking them back to the ship to ensure that they didn't die on this helipad. We'll do our best to try to rehabilitate them. It's the right thing to do, and by doing this we can also claim many more members for ourselves. But before we return back to our own base, there are still a few loose ends that need to be tied up, like destroying this base completely, starting out with their tidal wave generator, getting rid of any chance they'd have at power. We started to destroy some of these crates that they had until we realized that they were absolutely filled to the brim, practically spilling out with resources like steel and plasteel. Oh mama. It's all beginning to make sense. It would seem that Miasma has been doing a lot of mining here at this base for some pretty rare resources. Don't mind if we do. I'm guessing these rockets here have been used to shoot their resources back down to the planet's surface, where Miasma can use them for whatever devious projects they have. But instead, I think we'll be using them for ourselves here today. We're going to be launching all of these new rare metals, as well as the weapons that we took from our enemies back to our own base with our enemies' rockets. Oh my, it's a genius plan, and a very convenient one at that as well. Not to worry though, we were sure to send a message back to base so they didn't think that Miasma was dropping in right on top of their heads and going to blast them all to hell. No, my friends, thankfully, it's just a little care package. And now that we've gotten all the useful things back home, it was time for us to make sure that this base is completely inoperable, starting with their favorite mode of transportation. And of course, their deep water drills. No more mining for you, I'm afraid, friends. Well, I suppose our work here is done. A successful mission. Well, I'm just glad everything worked out completely fine and we are home safe and sound with our 2 new prisoners who we hope to have join us in the very near future. But, you know, all the injuries that we had sustained on our little mission made me realize that we don't have, but we definitely need a proper hospital, a nice medical bay, something of that sort, where if we were to get injuries once more, we can go to heal not only efficiently but very quickly as well, with some pretty advanced bedding and what have you. And so that's exactly what we ended up building. You'll notice there's about 7 rooms or so, each with a proper hospital bed and an IV bag. This will actually significantly increase the healing component of these rooms, and also, of course, we have a nice little lounge area that is quite beautiful in case any of our patients just want to go out and enjoy some foliage or something, I guess. Within this lounge area, though, we actually have a vitals monitor that will connect to every single room as well, and we also have our medicine cabinet, so pretty sweet. Now, our new medical bay is sucking up a lot of power, and as of right now, we're not having any power issues, but in the very near future, as we continue expanding, we almost definitely will. So I've decided to contact the Planet Service, some of the companies that sell advanced components, and I ended up purchasing quite a few of them. You see, of course, we have our great big solar field, and it's doing pretty good for the most part, but I think adding in a couple of advanced solar panels around our observatory is going to significantly increase our power production. We also made some slight upgrades to our battery bank, getting rid of some of the smaller ones and replacing them with some larger ones, just sorta kinda increasing our capacity for the time being until we can actually afford to buy more advanced components and thus build some advanced batteries. Now, something else that we learned on our little excursion, our mission over to the water moon, is that this ship needs some defenses. We don't really have enough resources to build anything all that significant, but we could build a singular probe turret which fires a very small laser. It's not much, but it'll help some, I suppose. Perhaps most importantly, it beats having nothing at all. A good bit of time later though, and we finally recruited the 2 Miasma lunar knots going by the names of Diedrich as well as Vapor into our ranks. Not only are they quite capable of helping out in terms of mining, construction, cleaning, and hauling, but we already know for a fact that they're pretty good fighters, it would seem. Some first-hand knowledge, you could say. We immediately let the lads go ahead and start putting on their spacesuits, and just so we don't get them confused, of course we had them dye their armor as well to a nice pretty cyan and a light green. Handsome fellows, eh? And I must say, not only have we increased our population by, well, only about 2 of these Miasma knots now being our own lunar knots, but we have actually made some significant upgrades and expansions to the moon base here today. I think we're almost completely finished with it. We're self-sustaining, but we still have a good bit more work to do, of course. Looks like expanding the base is going to need to wait a second, though. Miasma's back and they're really out for blood this time. Perhaps worst of all, they even have a gunner by the name of Haven, who just so happens to be the husband of Porg. They dropped in on the outskirts of our base's territory and immediately started coming right for us. There was no time to think about whether or not we would have to kill Porg's husband. We had to react. Mizaki rushed into the ship to get control over the probe turret to fire at them. All the while, the Miasma onslaught making their way towards our base. This fight would be vicious and ugly and full of venom. We would even have to use our lunar buggy in a military capacity, during which time it as well as our ship sustained very heavy damage to the hull. But a retreat was not possible. The only way out of this situation was killing them. And eventually, thanks to the combined efforts of all our lunar knots and our great big lasers, we managed to push them out. Even though the fleeing Miasma members were being gunned down by our probe turret, unfortunately it's quite inaccurate at a further range, and the majority of them managed to get away. But of course, we are good people who believe in rehabilitation, so those who were not dead, we began tending to them, taking them into our prison where they could rest comfortably and begin healing from all the burns that we inflicted on them. And yes, as many of you might be asking yourselves, this did include Haven, who damn near died out there, But as one might imagine, Porg was quite happy he didn't, even under these circumstances. Let's just hope that his wife has a better time convincing him to join us than Mizaki, of course. One thing is for sure though, our moon base might almost be completed, but the attacks and onslaughts from Miasma knots definitely is not. Hello, my wonderful little astronauts, and/or lunanauts, I suppose, lunarnauts? I just want to thank you guys ever so much for watching today's episode, as I always like to do at the end of each episode. And I want to remind you guys that if you would like to get early access to these episodes that you all know and love, feel free to subscribe to my Patreon on the Rat Specialist tier. That's the tier that will get you early access to these episodes at least a day, and a lot of the time a few days ahead of time. I always try to do them as far out as humanly possible. Recently I came back from a little vacation, so I'm kind of catching up, but most of the time try to get them out to you a few days ahead of time, of course. Or if you'd prefer and you'd like to have your name added to the video credits, you can also do the tier under that, which I think is the support rat tier, maybe, I believe is correct. But if you're not interested in any of that, I still want to thank you, of course, for watching. I love you guys ever so much, and just watching, liking, subscribing, even if you don't do the latter two, it really helps out, and I really appreciate you guys. But I love you. I'll see you later. Goodbye.